works. Our ordinary alterations of consciousness as we pass from one state to another are not transformations, your little moods, because each of them is so rapidly succeeded by another in the reverse direction. But whenever our assumption grows so stable as to definitely expel its rivals, then that central habitual concept defines our character and is a true transformation. This is also the answer to why, if it's something you really want and have imagined for quite a while, possibly why you haven't encountered it yet. Because I know a lot of people have this pattern, I've had it too, where you imagine it, and as soon as your imaginal act is done, you immediately think 50 contrary thoughts. You immediately identify with the current reality instead of remaining identified with that which you imagined. And this thing, whenever our assumption grows so stable as to definitely expel its rivals, that's just the power of doing it again and again and again and again until it becomes the dominant thought, the dominant sense of self. And you will know if it's this true transformation or not by your reactions. By your reactions to the exterior world. I've covered that before. There's a really great Neville quote about it. And by your internal reactions, not your external reactions. I think unfortunately I talked about this on the birthday stream. So let's say, I think the example I gave at the time was in the context of a relationship. You have assumed harmony in yourself and in all of your relationships, but you have a fight with someone, you have some form of conflict, they do something you don't like, and let's say in the moment you are totally stoned, you don't react to it in any sort of overly emotional language or whatever. Like you're just sort of like, okay, but in your mind you start fighting with them. It hasn't been a true change of self. You really haven't moved into that state of harmony. You are still, combative, and it will be reflected in the relationship. So yeah, I hope that's probably not the best example I could give. I think I'd had a better one about. I know a lot of people, because they really really like getting text messages and stuff nowadays. If someone doesn't reply to them in a certain expected amount of time, like let's say it is a relationship where you would be texting back and forth a lot, and that's something you desire in the relationship, and you have assumed, oh, they text me all the time, they always get back to me right away, and you send them a text and they don't text you back for what you feel is an inappropriately long amount of time. For one person, that might be 20 minutes. For another person, it might be 10 hours. For some other person, it might be 10 days, depending on the relationship and what you expect out of it. And so when that happens, what are you saying mentally? Are you saying, oh, well, I guess they don't want anything to do with me after 20 minutes? Or are you saying, oh, they're just busy, they'll get back to me when they can? Or you don't even notice that they didn't text you back in a certain amount of time. That reaction, or even more extreme, they don't text you back in 20 minutes and you spam them 5 more texts trying to get their attention. If you're doing that, you really haven't stepped into the constant contact, constant reliable contact that you prefer. You're still very much in the old state. Jesus, or enlightened reason, saw nothing unclean in the woman taken in adultery. He said to her, hath no man condemned thee? She said, no man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. No matter what is brought before the presence of beauty, it sees only beauty. Jesus was so completely identified with the lovely that he was incapable of seeing the unlovely. When you and I really become conscious of being Christ, we too will straighten the arms of the withered and resurrect the dead hopes of men. We will do all the things that we could not do when we felt ourselves limited by our family tree. It is a bold step and should not be taken lightly, because to do it is to die. John, the man of three dimensions, is beheaded, or loses his three-dimensional focus that Jesus, the fourth-dimensional self, may live, in reference to John the Baptist, who was the prophet that a lot of people were interested in before Jesus came along. John also, interestingly, as a name, means a beloved and is one of the disciples. Any enlargement of our concept of self involves a somewhat painful parting with strongly rooted hereditary conceptions. The ligaments are strong that hold us in the womb of conventional limitations. All that you formerly believed, you no longer believe. You know that there is no power outside of your own consciousness. Therefore, you cannot turn to anyone outside of self. You have no ears for the suggestion that something else has power in it. You know the only reality is God, and God is your own consciousness. There is no other God. Therefore, on this rock you build the everlasting church, and boldly assume you are this divine being, self-begotten because you dare to appropriate that which was not given to you in your cradle, a concept of self not formed in your mother's womb, a concept of self outside of the offices of man.